Okay, hi, my name is przilas, and this is going to be my final presentation for Sociology at the Movies, so I hope you enjoy. So, my movie is going to be a little different, but similar to things that you've seen before. And my main talking point and reason for making the movie is going to be social inequality. So, the entire poverty situation in the world is obviously a main talking point and is something that everybody has covered, something that we all deal with in day-to-day life. So, this is something that I think is a very important thing to discuss and something that might be good to make a movie out of. So, money is really the driving factor in everybody's life. Everybody needs money, and most people are never going to be able to make enough of it, at least not enough for it to actually matter. So, it really is something that a lot of people say, well, those with money have it and they could help us, but they don't. It's one of those things that they have it and they could help us, but realistically, should they? And that's something that I will also address in this. So, the movie is going to be called Every Number's a Winner. And yes, I would like to include the question mark because, as I will explain later, this is a very different thing that you might see to most people actually like winning a lottery. So, I would like it to be a relatable social drama, kind of framed around our main character and how he's been poor his entire life and he's been struggling, he's been homeless before, and I would like it to be, of course, one of those movies where the poor guy hits the lottery, he actually wins, but it's one of those things of he refused to be a failure. And I think that's a lot of difference than most movies make it out to be. So whenever people win the lottery, they're obviously, there's this shtick that everybody who wins the lottery inevitably loses it. In this, I would like him to be going ahead. I want him to be winning constantly, investing, making sure that he maintains that cash. So at the height, though, that's the thing, is he builds all this money. And realistically, to what end does he use it? So at the height, he's still going to feel unfulfilled. And he's going to feel as though he's made this entire pile of cash, but it's kind of meaningless. So he traded a day where, if you think about it, if you're living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, you are living for the day because you have to be successful during the day. Something has to happen, right? So you're living for the day, and it is a struggle. But whenever you have nothing to live for during that day because the entire sociology behind why you were doing what you were doing disappears because he went from needing money every day to, oh, I don't I don't have anything to do. So eventually it's traded for a life of extravagance in a way of he doesn't have to worry about anything. That's mostly the type of extravagance I would like to drive, but ultimately boredom. So what makes this movie different? And I've talked about this as we've gone on already, but I will retouch and I will also give a couple more examples. So most main characters in these situations, they burn out really quickly. They do these unbelievable acts and they hit a turning point. They hit this turning point and they make all this money or like they do all these other things. Our main character, I would like for him to have a slow burn. I would like for him to really just be still grinding every day, making money, trying to get his money to work for him. Obviously, it's not as much of a struggle anymore because he has, you know, if you have a really big hole to dig, but you have a 10-gallon shovel, I mean, it's not going to be that bad, right? So, the idea is that obviously after winning, he continues to work and but he doesn't spend any of it. He doesn't spend any money because he's afraid to. And I think that that's something that really sociologically we can think about is we're built into these concepts whenever we don't have money and whenever we're poor that you don't you don't spend it because you need it for everything else. You don't go buy extravagant things. You don't go get all of these like joy inducing things. Like you live your life and you try and continue living. So one aspect I will talk about is several movies see the main character of those movies doing these unbelievable things. The main character will buy houses for the homeless. He'll lift entire families out of poverty. And it's so unrealistic because the simple fact is if somebody who was poor just got an absolute massive amount of money, right? No, enough money that they didn't know what to do with it. They never would have to live like they'd never have to work another day in their life, right? They're not gonna go and spend it in this ungodly, unbelievable, massive way. Like we're talking, if you're buying entire houses for people, you're talking millions just right there if you're doing enough people. Because the base standard for a house is at least 100,000, and that's on the low end. But whenever, obviously, depending on where you live, of course, I will preface that. Um, I have only ever experienced houses being extremely expensive. So I will say that. Um, but essentially, what's going on is I want to tie in how he doesn't know how to spend money. And I don't think any of these other movies have ever done that. Is how do you show somebody who's never been allowed to spend their money just purely based on their environment? How do you expect that change to go into, oh, I'm gonna just drop all this money to do this? Yes, it's a wonderful act, and it's something incredibly generous and amazing to do, but I just don't think it's realistic. So I would like for our main character to do smaller things, things that I could actually see. For instance, if I had money, some things that I might do is maybe buying food for people. You know, the simplest thing is we all have to eat. So buying food for people or even donating to smaller charities to help other people. Because personally, I don't know how to fix any issues that other people are having. I have to worry about me and the people I care about. I don't know how to go out and make effective, great change on, people at large. And I think that that would be similar for a lot of people is, yeah, going and buying food, that makes sense. Like I said, everybody has to eat. But how do you spend this money to actively improve the standing in their life? And I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't expect a lot of people to know how to do that. So that's kind of what I want to reflect here as well is if I had the money, I would simply give it to a charity who I believe knows how to help somebody else. So to what end? Why? That is obviously the main reason we are here. Realism. And like I said, I've made talking points of this throughout this presentation, but most people in their actual lives will never experience a success like this. They'll never experience just going from nothing to everything. That's just not how it works. But I want it to maintain realism. That I think would be the most important part of this is you see these movies and they make a crap load of cash and they get all of this stuff from their winnings and stuff like that, and they spend it like it's on fire. And I have never once in my life at any point whenever I've received any amount of money that I didn't need or was just out of the blue, I have never once spent it in that way. And I think it's ungodly unrealistic. So I think one thing that I will also say that I think makes a good point is obviously there are real world examples of this. There are real world examples of people who won the lottery, spent the money like it was on fire, and lost it immediately. But my thing is I believe that those examples would make good tie-ins and good things to give to this, but I don't believe they're actual examples of what most people would do. I think that most people would do the same thing that I believe I would do, is they wouldn't know how to spend it. And inevitably they would sit on it, kind of like I would. Um, I like to tie this is that I'm trying to use these examples for things that I personally think I would do, right? So I think that I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And I think that for most people, that is true. And ultimately, it's deeply sociological because in life, the major struggle of most people is money, is not having enough money. Because we all want to live these better lives, or we all want to make it through easier. We all want to work less. We don't want to have to, be caught up in the rat race of day-to-day life. And I think that it's just poorly um it just it ties to the fact that throughout your entire life, you build up, I will preface, if you are middle class or poorer, even there are struggles that people with money have, but that's mostly not what we're talking about. If you are middle class or you are poor, you spend your life every dime you get, you don't spend it. Unless it is absolutely necessary to your survival, you don't spend that money. And it's because you never know if you're going to keep getting money. You never know if your job's going to fall through or if you're going to still be able to work or if, this, that, or the other. You never know if you're going to continue winning. So you hoard it, you sit on it, you only use it for what's necessary. And that is something that I think just in our minds, as we've built up over the years of living like that it just ingrains within us. And the main thing, you just always try and make sure it doesn't go away. So the thing that I think is tied mostly is growing up. Whenever you grow up, if you're poor, you don't get anything. I remember even as a kid on Christmas is my parents worked their asses off and we got these big gifts and I saw it and I was just like, this is so much money. Even as a kid, I thought of it and I was like, this is so much money. So I think the inevitability of the simple fact that these movies portray something that I don't think is true. I think that most people winning this amount of money don't act like these movies portray. So this is my wrap up. This is for really any unanswered questions that we had for our presentation. I'm going to present them here. So, firstly, obviously, why is the movie important? I think it gives a really good ground to look at and show the difference in social classes and the disparity that there is, the difference between not knowing what to do with your money and having too much money. There is a difference because if you don't know what to do with your money, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's something in your head, but having too much money is something kind of on the higher social end. So, interviewing and marketing. This is something that I think is very important. I think realistically for this movie, it would really be good to interview winners of like actual lottery winners and especially the lottery winners who lost everything, who went out, spent their money like it was on fire and lost it. And I would really like to sit down and even if it's not just for this presentation and just see why? What happened? Did you go crazy? Did things happen? Obviously everybody always has their hand out. If you know somebody who wins the lottery, you're like, hey, we've been friends forever, we're family and stuff, but that can't be the entirety of it, right? So, but I also think beyond the winners, frequent players and people in poverty, I think that talking to them and seeing, hey, if you did win, what would you do? Like actually, legitimately, everybody's always like, oh, I'll spend it on this, this, and this, but would you really? Would you really? Um, Finally, scenes. I think that scenes for this movie are incredibly important. Obviously, you want to show the actual winning. So in the actual title, it's all the numbers are winners, question mark. And that's because I want to get excitement over it. Obviously, if you've ever won anything, you're like, you get so excited and you can't believe it. So I want that to portray a form of excitement and something that the audience can also share in. But there's one scene that I think is more important than anything else. And I want it to be a scene where our main character, he's sitting there and he's staring at the screen and it has all his accounts on it, all his millions or billions or however crazy you want to go with it. And he's sitting there and he's just looking at it and he's staring at it. And then he looks around and he looks at where he's living, how he's, obviously in a situation like this, he hasn't gotten himself some luxury suite or anything. He's just living somewhere cheap, somewhere that works, and somewhere that is just enough for him to get by. And I want him to be looking at the screen and then looking around and checking, looking at how he has all of this money and then looking at the meager way he lives his life now. And I just want him to say, and I don't know how to spend a damn dime of it. And I really think that it's so big and so meaningful because it showcases how even though he's won, he's gotten the win that most people dream of for their entire lives, but he's still caught in that sociological rat race of I can't spend it. What if it goes away? What if it's not there tomorrow? And he is having this deep internal struggle of I don't know what to do with it. And I think really that would drive something very, very sad and maybe even getting the audience to pity him a little. It's hard to pity somebody in a situation where, they have a crap ton of money, but at the same time, I want them to be able to think of what if that was me? And I think that's the most important scene I could get for this movie. But that's going to be the finale. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.